extremely nice. My first father was my biological father, and he was a smart man, very intelligent. He could be a carpenter, a mason, a draftsman. He could be almost anything. He had the talent for it. Yeah, thanks. He had the talent for it, but he had a problem with booze. He was addicted to it. He couldn't leave it alone. And it just got worse and worse. Every time he would start a business, which he was smart enough to do, he would get it going really well, and then he would go out on, we used to call it a binge, and he would go out on a binge and get drunk and stay that way for weeks at a time, and when he came back, he would lose his business. But in the end, he had moved out. He'd been married several times, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times, and his last wife that we talked to was out in California, and he had had a heart attack and he passed away. And when we talked to her, she said that he loved the Lord. And I thought, oh God, he's been saved and he's in heaven now. But it was rough. He went through a lot. And I can remember one time, actually it was kind of funny when it happened. Well, Mom divorced him, but that's not funny. She said, I ruined a whole set of china on him. And I said, what? She said, yeah, I ruined a whole set of china on him. We had the last house that he built, we called it the tar paper shack. And it was nothing but black, what do you call that, fiberboard on the outside. And it was all black and everything. And we had no partitions in the rooms or anything. We had wires strung across, and they had blankets and sheets on, and that was our rooms. And we had a water pump in the corner, and it was all one of those old-fashioned, water pumps. And he was standing, that was all the water we had, and he was standing there ducking china. He was hiding behind the pump and to see my mom do that, some of you know who she is, and she seems to be mild-mannered and all that stuff, but believe me, you don't know her when she's at home being herself. She was a tough girl, I'll tell you. But anyway, she complained a little bit about that whole set of china, and anyway, like I said, last time we heard from him or his wife was that he loved the Lord, and we thought that was so great. And my next father, stepdad, well, you knew him here. He came here a few times, and one thing that he said was that I'd rather fight than eat, and he meant fist fight. He was a street fighter, and he was tough, boy. But we had to respect him because what he said went, what he said goes, and he treated us pretty rough, but he was also a giver. I remember him, people brought fish over, and he had a smokehouse, and he smoked fish for them. I don't think he charged anything, and he just did a lot of things for other people, but he treated us pretty rough. When we would be going out the door, he would say, we'd be gone camping down the bottom of the old hills, and as we walked out the door, he'd kick us in the butt. And that wasn't very pleasant, but it was just kind of a sign that he cared for us, I guess. I don't know, but anyway. My mom loved him, and I wasn't sure about him at all. I don't know if I ever made up my mind what I wanted to do with him. I don't know, but anyway, I can remember when I messed up. This was my fault. They had a little plastic bank in their bedroom, and they were putting their change in it. Every day at the end of the day, they would take their pocket change and put it in that bank. And I got the idea. Guess who I was listening to? And I found out that if I took a knife and tip the bank upside down. I could work get the silver out of there. Well, not thinking, I took all the silver out and left the pennies. And one day, one afternoon, he called all of us out there, and he said, he lined us up, in front of in the kitchen, and he said, okay, who was it? And we looked at him and said, what? Said, who stole the money out of it was for Cookie, that was my sister, out of Cookie's bank. And I didn't hesitate, I just stepped forward, it was me. He had this thing, he used to be on the bone, and if you don't know what that is, he was a hobo. He rode the rails and he did all that stuff, and that was the reason for a lot of things that he did, but one of the things that he said was he could not stand a thief. He hated a thief. So they kicked me out. And that was the second time we had been kicked out. We were kicked out as all three of us for some other thing that we did. And they allowed us to come back home, but this time they kicked me out, and I went to live with my grandparents. And I was mad at my mom because she didn't fight for me. She didn't do anything. She just stood there and let him talk. And I was upset for a long, long time until I found out that she was paying Grandma and Grandpa some money every week. Every time she got paid, she would give them some money to raise me, and then I got over being mad at her. But I was really mad. I took that for a long time. Then at roller skating, we went every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We went every time we got a chance. We dance skated and did all that stuff, and this girl kept coming up to me. I was in the Army at the time. And this girl came up to me and says, I know you, but you don't know me, And, okay. And later she comes up and says the same thing. I know you, but you don't know me. And about the third time she did that, I grabbed her arm and said, who are you? She said, well, I know your brother Greg, and she knew the whole family. And I didn't ask her then, but after she went into the break room and was with some other girls, I went up to her and I said, what an Italian friend of mine that I always hung around with, what he said, and that is, when are you going out with me? And she says, when you ask me. So I went, oh, okay. So I was in trouble because I didn't have a car, I didn't have anything. So I said, okay, I'm asking, not thinking. But anyway, the arrangements were made. My brother Greg drove, and he went with his girlfriend, and I went with Sister Diane. And we went out for a few times. We had experiences. I had an old 55 Studebaker, and my brother had taken his car, and he had a hose, water, on the inside. He was washing the inside of the car out, and I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I didn't know you could do that. So I did that to mine. It had a floor heater in it. So what happened to all the water? It went into the floor heater. So when we went out that night, inside of the car got foggy. It was just water dripping off the windows and off everything, And they laughed. That was so funny. But anyway, eventually dried out, and we could drive the thing and still see where we're going. But like I said, I was in the Army, and her birthday came up, and she was feeling really bad because I told her that I couldn't make it because I had that guard duty or some kind of thing. I don't know what I had. But I talked to some people, and I made arrangements to come home, and she didn't know that. And I got home, and I got a ride out there with my grandparents, and they dropped me off at her driveway, and I walked up, and her dad on the inside said, hey, I think there's a soldier. Well, she thought I wasn't coming. And her dad says something about, I think there's a soldier coming up the driveway, and she went, what? And she ran out the door and almost knocked me off the steps. I think she was glad that I was there. I'm not sure. Until then, she was mad at me for something. I don't know. But we lived together, married for 47 years. Yeah, I almost messed that up. A husband that forgets your anniversary. anyway, we had our problems. There was things that we had, that was not good. But through that, we had two wonderful kids, two girls. I wanted a boy. I got girls. And, anyway, they have proven to be, I don't know how you would say it. They're both wonderful. They've both been through their troubles and everything. And I think everybody goes through times when they really messed up or whatever, but they get through that. It gets better. And I need you to know that the reason I brought up my two parents that I weren't real happy with was that they were forgiven. My stepdad, I was with him in the hospital when he passed away, and he was laying down. Remember I said he was a street fighter. He was tough, and he was laying on his back, and I walked in and I said, Dad, we've been to church by then, and I'm thinking I was saved. I'm not sure when. Anyway, I knew better. And I said, Dad, I'm here because, and I started to say, because remember all the things that went between us that happened and everything? And before I even said anything, he said, they're forgiven. And I said, yeah, it doesn't matter what we did before, but it's all forgiven, and you can't forget it. Things, they kind of stick with you, but they were forgiven. And then shortly after that, I saw him pass away, and it was hard. He just took a deep breath, and he was gone, and the reason I'm thinking that he was saved was because he came to our church for a while, and over at the other church, Sister Dawson was there, pastor's mother, and there's stories about her that you want to hear some of the stories that she was reading and she was blind. And she knew it. You would quote a scripture to her and she would finish it for you, even though she was blind. She was just something else. And when she came in, you could feel the Spirit move. My gosh, she was bringing it in with her, and for the first time in my stepdad's life, I walked up to him. He was in one of those pews, and I walked up to him, and I looked at him, and he was crying. And I'm sorry. Anyway, to see a street fighter, he was a street fighter, not just on TV or just pretending or anything. He was tough, and he was crying, and I just remember that, and I'm assuming, they don't say good things about assume, but I'm assuming that he was saved too, so he made it to heaven too. So the two guys that I had the most, qualms against, or whatever the word is, were saved. Both of them were. I could tell you so much more. It's just, after I was kicked out, I was with my grandparents, and I went to school. I think it was in the 9th grade or something like that, and one of the teachers called me off to the side and said, what's going on with you? And I said, what? She said, well, when you first came here, you were all A's and B's and, all the higher scores. And he said, now you've dropped down to, you're almost failing. In fact, I did fail one time. But I didn't know it had any effect on me. I thought being, removed from the house like that was no big deal. This is fun. I'm going to my grandma's house and won't do anything, whatever. And I did some pretty rotten things. Anyway, I couldn't believe there was a difference, but it is. If you have to get a divorce, you feel like you have to, and I'm not judging anybody, I'm not cutting anybody down, because I've done worse. And I've probably had parents that were not as bad as some of you might have had. I don't know. So I'm not asking for, feelings for me, or feel bad, oh poor bud. No, I'm not asking for that. I'm saying never give up. on people. I don't care who they are or what you're praying for. I've heard of people taking 10 years praying for someone before they got turned around, before things happened. Never give up. And I gave up a lot of times. I mean, but then I came right back, So, and the Lord drew me back, I should say. And forgiveness and stick-to-itiveness. Stick with both of them. That will get you through. And well, you know who you're depending on, right? Yeah. So He will get you through. So don't give up. Don't ever give up. And like I say, I made all these notes and I haven't read any of them yet. So, I did have something I wanted to show you. If I can find it here. Is it even in here? Oh no, it is in here. Well, what it was, what did I do with it? Oh, here, this is Bob's stories. Attaboy, Bob. I found them here. Deuteronomy 6:6-7. The way to a man's heart might be his stomach, but the way to your kids' hearts is much more direct. You can sum it up in one word: time. Spend time with your kids. I had a thing come to me when I was taking my daughter Kelly up to some friend's house, and I got that, and the Lord was speaking to me, and I said whatever, it was a compliment like to her, and I saw a big smile, and I thought, oh my God, I'll tell you what, there's a song, what's it called? I Want to Be Like You, Dad. This country song, I Want to Be Like You. They follow you. They do what you do. And whether you're doing right or wrong, they'll copy. If you teach them how to speak good English, they will. And if you speak them how to say those other words, they'll use those too. Hello? Somebody call? Let's see, you can time. In reality, nothing says you're important to your child like the time you spend with them. And as Moses suggested in Deuteronomy, some of that time can be used as a teachable moment. I've got one or two more that I want to do. I'm not going to read all of them because Kelly made copies of them, and she said there was 55 of them. And I said, what? I'm not going to get up there and read 55 of them, but I can't even get this page. I'm shaking too much. I would like to say it's a spirit, but I think it's a nerves. It says, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. The best way to love your kids is to love God with all your heart. The next best way is to love their mother as well. Children who see their parents sharing a loving relationship feel more secure.
Yes.
This thing of divorce and separation and legal separation and all this garbage that they're feeding you, it affects your kids. Look what it did to me when I went to school and the teacher was asking me why my grades dropped so low. That's one of the reasons, and I didn't even catch it. I think I got one more. My fingers get so dry I can't turn pages. I was catering and I had to use that quick sort stuff because my hands were so dry. Fathers, don't stir up anger in your children, but bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Ephesians 6:4, being a good father means disciplining your kids, but discipline them so you don't hurt them. Okay? Well, can't say that either because I had several spankings and they hurt. But don't do something that will drive them backwards. Don't do that. Let them know that you're for them, that you love them. And I've got so many here. Like I said, my friend, it was Judy Couch that did this and got all this stuff for me. But anyway, I wasn't going to read all 55 of them. But that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Husband. So I wasn't real clear on benevolence and how it fit into the verse, and so I looked it up, and it says disposition to do good, kindness, generosity. So the thing I've learned is that if you can't be kind and generous to your spouse, you're not going to be kind and generous to your children or people at work or anyone else for that matter. So the saying that it starts as home is a very true fact. It does start at home. Mm-hmm. The things that you say to your spouse, your children hear, and trust me, they will take it to school. Mm-hmm. David did that to me on more than one occasion. Mm-hmm. And it was never the right way. So your kids will repeat everything you say. So, anyways, my sister and I learned very quickly the kids used to pick on us, and they were mean all the time. They would call me names, and they would pick on Marcy, and we learned at a young age that you're supposed to love those that hurt you. And it was hard to understand that you were supposed to, you didn't have to like them. You didn't have to condone it, but you still had to love them. And we had to learn the difference between loving someone even when they persecute you and even when they're not nice to you. And we did that. We had to learn a way to do that. And we did. And we'd come to girls group and we would talk about it. And we had a lot of guidance and directions because it was hard. And what they were doing was not right, but we had to be the Christian because we were the ones that we would go to school and we didn't do what the other kids did. We were Christians, and we spent our young years in the church, and we were, on Monday night it was one thing, on Tuesday night it was youth, on Wednesday night it was church service, on Thursday night we were at day spring practice, and on Friday night we had girls club, and on Saturday we had youth, and on Sunday we had church, and that was norm for us.
That's right.
And I'm not complaining, and I'm very thankful. I played the flute growing up, and I did marching band in high school. But the thing that I remember the most is that each and every one of you that I'm looking at, there's a lot of you here, you had something to do with my childhood, and you raised me. They say it takes a village. Well, I don't believe that it takes a village. I believe it takes a church.
Yeah, amen.
I believe that everyone in here that has children, and you see your children, Richie, I see your children, Brittany, I see your children every week.
Yes.
And I love them.
Yes.
Angie, I see your girls every day and every week, and every week your daughter, Kaya, comes up to me and throws her arms around me, and that lets me have a connection.
Yes.
And even when Kaya's in trouble, she's got somebody. And even when Lily may feel like she can't talk to her mom and dad, and trust me, there were a lot of years that I felt like I couldn't talk to my parents, but I would come here and I could talk to Karen. I could talk to Sister Karen, or I could talk to one of the girls in youth group, and I wouldn't get sent in the wrong direction.
Right.
And I could talk to Sister Debbie, and I could talk to Sister Debbie Gibbs, because there was people here that I could trust, and I felt like that if I asked them, and I told them the worst thing about me, the thing that I had done that was totally wrong, and that I was too ashamed to tell my parents, that they were not going to run to my parents and say, "You will not believe what your daughter did." And that's important because your kids have to feel like they have that. They have that sanctity. They have that person that they can go to, and they're not going to tell on them, and they're going to give them the guidance that the Lord wants them to have versus what our world wants them to have. Because trust me, from experience, this world is trying to kill your kids.
Yes. Yes.
They are trying to drive them down a path where in the end, the only thing they're going to be is lost. They're going to be lost. So when your kids complain about the fact that they can't go somewhere or they can't do something, trust me, when they grow up, they're going to thank you. That's right. We talked about spanking your children. Well, let me tell you, coming from a child who was spanked, and there was no uncertain terms if I did something to offend my mom, that he was going to be the first one to blister my behind. When I got to be an adult, I thanked him.
Yes.
I said, "Dad, thank you for disciplining me." Because it taught me how to discipline my kids. Everything that your parents teach you as a child, you grow up and you learn how to raise your children. That's why the parents out there that don't care about these kids that are running the streets, when they grow up and become parents, they have no clue.
Yes.
So their kids do the same thing they did.
Yes.
So never give up on your kids.
That's right.
Don't ever, ever, ever give up on your kids, because I had a son who it would have been really easy to give up on. And he wasn't even my blood. I adopted him by choice, and I thank God every day that I did. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
To take someone else's child and to raise them as your own. That takes a special dad and a special mom. So don't ever give up on your kids, no matter how hard it becomes. Proverbs, I went down a rabbit hole. Proverbs 1:7-9. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Teach your kids to fear the Lord. Don't always make him. I remember how floored I was when Pastor Shirley, it was before you were pastor, said that God hated things. I never knew that. Did you know that God actually hates things? I always was under the impression that God loved everybody and that God was love and he is love. And it's not that he isn't. But there are things that he hates and that he will not abide by. He's just like us as parents. There are things that we do as a human race that he hates and he does not like it. And he will not abide by it. But I was just floored when I found that out. It was like one of them wow moments. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. My son, hear the instruction of thy father. And forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and a chains about that neck. And when I read that, I was like, well, I don't want chains around my neck. But he's not talking about those kind of chains. He's talking about jewelry. He's talking about adornments. When you do what your parents say and if you listen and fear the Lord, that you'll live longer. If you listen to your parents and you do what they tell you to do, you'll actually live longer. God promises a longer life. On January 28th of 2012 is when the amazing team that I grew up with changed. And my mom went home to be with the Lord. And I'll be honest with you, I was totally convinced that when my mom died, that my dad was going to fall. And that was my fault, because I didn't have the faith that I should have had in him as a father. But I knew how close they were, and they did absolutely everything together. They worked together, they went to church together, they raised us together. And when my mom died, I thought, oh Lord, this is going to be bad. And my mom took me aside, and she told me that she was worried. She's like, I'm worried that your dad won't be able to make it. She says, we've been together for so long. And she says, you promised me that you will take care of your dad. And I told her, I said, Mom, I promise you that no matter what happens, that I will take care of my dad. I don't care. I don't care how bad it gets, and I don't care how bad he feels. I will be there. I promised. And then was the day that she told me that, daughter, if I have a mantle, that I'm giving that to you. And I didn't know what that meant until the other night. But it's a huge responsibility. And I take it very seriously. I take being there for my father very, very seriously. Because I don't want anybody to hurt him.
Right.
I will stand to my death for my father. Because that's how my Heavenly Father did it.
Yes.
He stood to his death for me.
Yes.
And by golly, I'm going to stand there as long as it takes. And as much as it takes. Because he loved me.
Yes.
Because he loves me. He always has. And he gets mad because we talk about paying it forward. But what he didn't know is, see, my mom didn't always tell him everything. And when I was growing up, they lent us a lot of money. I am here to tell you, whenever I would dig myself a hole, I would call Mom, and Mom would go, okay, daughter, Every time I would do something wrong, she would come and I'd go to her and I'd go, Mom, I don't know what to do. And she'd hand me money. And so now I feel that this is my way of paying it back. And my way of doing the right thing. Because when you grow up, your parents change when they get older. And that's just a natural way of things. But I truly believe that your parents spend 20 plus years of your life and even into your 30s, and when you're an adult and you get married for the first time and you and your spouse have your first argument and you don't need to go to, so you go to your mom or your dad because you just don't know how to handle it. They've been there for you. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So when they get older, you are the one that needs to be there for them.
Yes.
You as a child need to be there when they're hurting.
Yes.
And when they're getting older and they don't understand, and in their mind, their bodies, their mind says that they can still do those things. My dad decided that he was going to clean out his gutters all by himself, and he called me and he's like, hey, can I borrow Pete's ladder? And I was like, sure, what for? He says, well, I'm going to go clean out the gutters. And I said, not on your own, you're not. I was like, no way. So what I did is I tricked him. I know you did, because Pete brought the ladder over, but Pete stayed until you were done. I do remember. He does a lot of things behind the backs, but the thing, my point is that we're supposed to be there for each other. Your parents were there for you all of your childhood and half of your adult life.
That's right.
And when they get older, you should be there.
That's right.
In some way, shape, or form, you should be there.
That's right.
Because they're going to get upset. And they're going to get sad, and they're going to have lonely nights, especially when one of their spouse passes.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be alone in that really scared moment in the middle of the night. They need to know that they got someone they can call at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, I just needed to hear your voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they need. And that's what is important. And that's what it means by being a good dad. And that's what it means by being a good mom.
Mm-hmm.
To be there for each other. And my dad stayed steadfast. That was the thing that impressed me the most. Is my dad shocked me. We went through the grieving, and we went through the moving, everything 1,200 miles north, because I was afraid for him to be by himself. And we went through all of that. And my dad still came to church.
Yes.
I was shocked because I felt like, without my mom, he was just going to give up, crawl in a hole, and die. I really felt that way. But he didn't. And he stayed faithful.
Yes.
He stayed faithful.
Yes.
And he set an example for our family that he will never even understand ever. The fact that when you're going through the biggest pain and the most hurt in your lifetime, and you stay steadfast, your family sees that.
Yes.
Your kids see that.
Yes.
And it makes a difference. Because even though I'm hurting because I just lost my mom, I know that I need to stay faithful.
Yes.
Because my daddy did.
Yes.
My daddy stayed faithful. And he's a just man.
Yes.
1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain
Yes.
in the Lord. Everything we do is done for a reason. Everything that God directs us to is for a reason. Every bad thing you go through is for a reason. Every nightmare that you go through and you just can't understand why God would allow this to happen to you, there's going to come a point in time where somebody's going to look at you and go, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And you can look at them and say, I know exactly how you feel. When Angie adopted those girls and she goes through a nightmare, I could look at her and say, honey, I know exactly what you're going through. So everything that you go through, just know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that even though it's really hard and it's painful and it hurts, that God has a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Every struggle that you make. Proverbs 28:20, a faithful man shall abound with blessing, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. Money isn't the answer.
Right.
I'll tell you young people right now,
Mm-hmm.
money is not the answer. You can work your entire life and have all the money in the world and be the most miserable person out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And until you put God number one
That's right.
in your life, you will never be at peace.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that from experience because I tried that. I was one of those kids that didn't listen to his parents, and I did exactly what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, and I went out after college and got my own apartment, even though my mom said, you know, you can't afford this.
Mm-hmm.
I did it anyways. And I thought that if I got a job and I made a lot of money that I was going to be happy. Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
And when I didn't listen to him, when I met somebody and they knew that he wasn't any good for me and that he was going to run me down a road of misery, and I didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if I could tell you kids anything,
Mm-hmm.
you young people, listen to your parents even when you think they're stupid.
Yes.
Because the older you get, the more intelligent they become. Because I swore that my parents were stupid at 15. By 18, I just thought they were ignorant. So by the time I was 25, I was like, you know what? The older I get, the smarter they become. So listen to your parents. It's important.
Mm.
You have a good dad. You have a good mom. Listen to them.
Yes.
Even when it's not fun.
Yes.
Luke 6:35, but love ye your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again. And your reward shall be great, and ye shall be the children of the highest. For he is kind unto the thankful and unto the evil. And I didn't understand that until I really thought about it. Jesus was kind to everyone, and it did not matter
Mm-hmm.
who you were or how you were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think about on the chosen, the woman at the well, and what she had done, and he knew what she had done, and he was kind to her.
Mm-hmm.
So be kind. Be kind to your children. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I've seen that more than once in my lifetime. I am a product of that, because I walked away from the Lord on more than one occasion. And I don't care how far you run, you can't run far enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because once they bring you up here, when you are a baby, and you don't know what's going on, and they commit you to the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Thank you. When they dedicate you to the Lord, that stays.
Yes.
That's a covenant.
Yes.
And especially if you got a praying mama.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, I had a praying mama, and I had a very, very big praying dad.
Mm.
And they will bring you back, and God will bring you back, and he will draw you back. So, anyways, that's really all I have. But I would like to ask, when the kids come back, if I could have about 10 minutes. The Lord's given me a couple of verses for them, and I'd like to give them to them. I love you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really kind of glad that there is no Facebook, because any other place I'm scared to death to talk. I know that half of you find that really hard to believe, but I really do, and I love every one of you.
We love you too, sweetie.
I remember growing up with every one of you, and yes, we got in trouble. And Rich, you did pick on me, I will tell you. But I've forgiven you a long time ago. And I love you dearly.
Mm-hmm.
I figured that's all. That's just rich.
But anyways, I love you dearly, and I thank you for everything and being my parents when my parents were 1,200 miles away. I thank you for that.
We love you too, Kel.
She's talking about Richie picking on her.